What if I told you? The world you see isn't the world that exists. It's the version you were allowed to see. Everything from the colors in your feed, to the way you define success, to what you believe is normal, was pre-selected. You didn't choose it. It was curated, not by accident, not by nature, but by a system, an interface, a kind of operating system for consciousness. And here's the twist. You're not running on developer mode. You're on user mode, restricted access, read-only settings. The buttons work, the screen lights up, but the core code, you've never seen it. Most people never do, because the real question isn't, what is reality? It's who has admin privileges to shape it. You think you're scrolling through your own life, but every click, every ad, every decision you think you made was nudged, not through force, not through chains, but through design. The control was never physical. It was psychological, energetic, embedded, and to break it, we don't attack the system. We learn how to read the code underneath it. To do that, we'll have to peel it back layer by layer, from behavior to belief, to the very way you experience being you. Your brain isn't built to think freely. It's built to repeat, to recognize patterns, save energy, and automate behavior. That's not a flaw. It's how humans survived lions, winters, and famine. But what once kept us alive now makes us programmable. Think about your morning routine. You wake up, check your phone, open the same apps, swipe the same thumb, drink the same coffee, walk the same route, sit at the same desk, open the same emails, come home, crash, repeat. It feels normal. It feels like you. But what if it's not habit? What if it's code? What if your daily life isn't a reflection of your will, but a script? Let me tell you about Patricia. She worked a quiet office job, commuted the same way every day, lived a simple, structured life. But then she started noticing things. Her train was always exactly 2 minutes late. Her favorite cafe always had 3 people in line. Her co-workers repeated the same jokes every Monday, as if on cue. She brushed it off at first. Coincidence, right? But she started documenting it. Patterns, repeats, loops. And it wasn't random, it was too clean, too calculated. Something was scripting reality, and she had just started reading the lines. Because here's the truth. You're not reacting to the world, you're reacting to a loop. Science confirms it. Studies show up to 89% of daily behavior is automatic, not conscious. Your brain isn't making new choices. It's playing back old recordings, fast-forwarding through your life on neural autopilot. It reuses the same thought pathways, the same micro-decisions, the same emotional grooves. Until your behavior becomes not just habit, but identity. Neuroscientists call this Hebbian learning, neurons that fire together, wire together. Like grooves etched into vinyl, your thoughts follow the same track again and again, until any deviation sounds wrong. Not because it is, but because it's unfamiliar, and unfamiliar feels unsafe. So you stick with the loop, even if it keeps you stuck, even if it isn't you anymore. Here's where it gets dangerous. You don't notice this happening, because you're not supposed to. That's part of the program. Control doesn't begin with force. It starts with convenience, with small nudges, with recommended for you. It hides in the timing of your notifications, in the autoplay of your next distraction, in your alarm clock's tone. Engineered not just to wake you, but to resync your rhythm with theirs. Every beep says, "Don't think, just move." And it works. Not because you're weak, but because your brain is efficient. It conserves energy. It seeks patterns. It prefers repetition over reinvention, so it locks in routines. And those routines become your reality. Think of your mind like a GPS. It doesn't ask where you want to go. It maps based on past destinations. Once a route is chosen, it becomes the default, and you just follow. But here's the catch. You didn't draw the map. It was drawn for you by society, by culture, by marketing, by trauma, by survival. And now, you're walking someone else's blueprint, believing it's your own. That's why attention is the most valuable resource on Earth. More than money, more than oil, more than gold. Because where attention goes, behavior follows. Where behavior repeats, identity solidifies. And once your identity is set, you no longer ask questions, you defend the loop. But here's the moment it all starts to break. When you notice the pattern, when you interrupt the script, when you pause long enough to ask, why do I do this? And that question, as simple as it sounds, is revolutionary. Because most never ask it. They don't notice that their cravings were marketed, that their politics were inherited, that their fears were installed. They confuse their preferences for their personality, their conditioning for their self. But once you see the pattern, you can begin to step outside of it. To observe, not obey. To respond, not react. To reprogram, not recycle. This isn't about life hacks or 5 steps to productivity. This is about liberation, reclaiming authorship over the most important script ever written, the one inside your own mind. And it all begins with a quiet but devastating realization. Most of what you do isn't really you. But that loop didn't write itself. The behaviors were placed. The responses were taught. The identity was reinforced. And somewhere, someone designed it that way, which leads to the next question. But if your identity was installed, then what about your reality itself? What if even the world you live in is just code? So who built the map? Who designed the loops of thought you call you? To answer that, we have to go back. Not just decades, but centuries. Ancient Gnostic texts, hidden for over 1,600 years and uncovered in Nag Hammadi, spoke of a false reality. A prison not made of bars, but of perception. They warned of archons, non-human intelligences, imitators of reality, masters of illusion. Entities that didn't destroy worlds. They copied them, and then convinced people to live inside the copy. Fast forward to today. David Icke, one of the most polarizing voices of modern times, took this ancient idea and brought it to our modern landscape. He didn't call them demons. He didn't call them gods. He called them forces, subtle, energetic, operating just outside the visible spectrum, feeding off fear, thriving on confusion, shaping the very reality people believe they're freely choosing. But they don't show up in robes, they don't arrive in ships. They show up as institutions, as algorithms, as culture. They don't take control, they install it. Welcome to the cognitive grid, a structure so vast, so normalized, that it becomes invisible to those inside it. Your entire life exists within it. From how you're educated, to how you consume media, to what you believe success looks like. School teaches obedience. News teaches fear. Social media teaches comparison. Entertainment teaches distraction. Advertising teaches inadequacy. Finance teaches dependence. They seem separate, but they speak the same language: compliance. And the genius of it? You don't realize you're being conditioned, because the conditioning is embedded in what the world calls normal. You were born into the grid, handed its script before you had words. Sit still. Get good grades. Don't question. Fit in. Work hard. Buy more. Don't stop. You didn't question it, because no one around you did. But have you ever asked, who wrote that script? Who benefits from a world where billions wake up and hand over their attention, their focus, their identity, without resistance? This is where the idea of the architects emerges, not as a metaphor, as a design team. And no, they're not politicians. They're not tech billionaires. They're not even secret societies. Those are just interfaces, visible layers of a much deeper architecture. The true architects stay hidden, like stage directors in a theater where the actors don't know they're acting. They light the scene, they cue the music, they decide what emotions are amplified and which ones are muted. And the result? A world where no one feels imprisoned, because everyone guards their own cage. These architects don't need to control you. They only need you to believe you're choosing. They plant a suggestion. You call it a dream. They inject a fear. You call it wisdom. They set up two false choices. You call it free will. You were trained to chase freedom, as long as it came with terms and conditions. Here's how the game is played. They don't lie. They distort truth. They flood your mind with cycles, outrage news, manufactured crisis, cultural panic, artificial trends, all while reinforcing one thing: the grid must remain intact. They divide to conquer, left versus right, science versus spirituality, tradition versus progress. Always duality, always division, because a fragmented mind can't ever see the whole frame. And now, with AI entering the scene, the grid has grown smarter. Your preferences, your fears, your typing speed. All data points. Machine learning models don't need to read your mind. They just need enough data to write a better version of you than you can, and then feed that version back to you with perfect efficiency. You think you're scrolling freely, but you're reacting to the version of reality, custom designed to keep you looping. But cracks are forming. More people are waking up, feeling an artificial weight, a pressure they can't name. They start noticing how their outrage feels scripted, how their aspirations seem copy-pasted, how their identity feels more like a performance than a home. And that first question breaks the spell. When did I stop thinking for myself? Because here's the part they don't want you to know. The moment you name the architect, even just as an idea, you reclaim agency. Not rebellion, not violence, just withdrawal. You stop reacting to the content and start questioning the source. And that, more than anything, is what the system fears most. To keep you from waking up. They don't need guns. They need content. Imagine reality not as a place, but as a program. A dynamic stream of code running silently in the background. Adapting, updating, optimizing, based on one input, you. This isn't science fiction anymore. It's not just metaphor. It's a consensus forming among scientists, philosophers, mystics, and coders alike. Welcome to the algorithm of reality. In traditional simulation theory, the universe is seen as a kind of rendered environment, displayed in real time, but only when someone's watching. Reality is performance, and consciousness is the audience. But there's another deeper layer. Yuval Noah Harari calls it dataism. A belief that all organisms, decisions, feelings, even spiritual longings can be reduced to flows of data. And here's the kicker. Once something becomes data, it becomes programmable. Think about it. Every swipe, every pause, every like, comment, keyword, every second you hover on a face, every backspace you hit before pressing send, all of it, data. That data is fed into systems. Those systems learn, they evolve, they anticipate. At first, it's harmless. The next ad, the next video, the next suggested product. But it doesn't stop there. Your digital profile becomes so precise, so optimized, that the system doesn't just predict your next move. It nudges you into it. What you buy, what you feel, who you trust, who you fear, what causes you fight for, what you forget by design. You believe it's just how you are. But what if it's how you were assembled? And the terrifying part. The less aware you are, the more accurate the system becomes. The more predictable your loops, the more efficient its guidance. You become simulatable, modelable, controllable. Let's go deeper. You don't live in one objective world. You live in a customized feed of reality, a psychographic sandbox, shaped by algorithms, curated by engagement metrics, filtered through thousands of invisible decisions. What news you see, what emotions are activated, what threats appear urgent, what truth is served to you today. You're not seeing the world, you're seeing the version of it that was designed to keep you watching. The system doesn't show you what's real, it shows you what works. And it doesn't just affect your opinions, it reaches deeper into something sacred, your worldview, your hopes, your questions about God, your longing for something more, even your spiritual awakening. Is market-tested, TikTok therapy, Instagram rituals, AI-generated affirmations, YouTube spiritual rabbit holes carefully algorithmized. In a world run by metrics, even transcendence becomes content. And the most dangerous part? You believe it's you discovering it, but the algorithm's been following you for years, shaping your longing before you could even name it. What you thought was awakening might just be the newest identity update. This is what Gnostic mystics feared, not physical enslavement, but the simulation of meaning, a reality so well crafted that even your questions about truth lead you back into another layer of the loop, and the deeper you go, the harder it becomes to see where the program ends and you begin. Because when every desire is tracked, when every search is logged, when even your rebellion has a hashtag, you have to ask, is there anything left that's truly mine? But here's the turning point. The algorithm is only powerful when you don't notice it. It feeds on unconscious participation. It loops best when you stop asking. But the moment you truly observe it, something changes. The code stutters. The rendering hesitates. The feedback loop weakens. Because awareness is the one variable it can't predict. It scrambles the math. It introduces chaos. It makes you unrepeatable. And that's when you start breaking through. The moment you stop scrolling in autopilot. The moment you read between the suggestions. The moment you choose silence over stimulus. You become the observer, not the object. And in that shift, reality stops performing and starts responding. Because here's the deeper truth. You're not living in the real world. You're living in a psychologically rendered replica, crafted precisely to earn your compliance. The question is, now that you see it, will you keep playing? Or will you start asking, who built this version of reality for me? And what happens when I stop accepting it? You've heard the phrase, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. But in today's world, that idea is already outdated, because now you are no longer just the product. Your perception is, your wants, your values, your sense of what's real and what matters have all become commodities. And the systems running the world, they've become terrifyingly good at shaping what you think is you. Let's talk about dopamine. Every like, every swipe, every little ding of a notification is a microdose of chemical validation. It's not random, it's engineered. These platforms are neurological slot machines. Pull the lever, win attention. Pull again, win nothing. Try again, maybe this time. But what happens when the reward isn't just a comment, but a new belief? What happens when your emotions, dreams, and fears are conditioned the same way your shopping habits are? Take a moment. Think about the last thing you really wanted. A car, a vacation, a status symbol, a spiritual awakening. Now ask yourself, where did that want come from? Was it born from the quiet space within you, or was it installed? Advertisers no longer sell products. They sell identities. They don't ask, do you want this? They say, this is who you should be if you want to matter. They take aspiration, wrap it in branding, and market it as normal. It's not just a lifestyle, it's a loop. Craving, purchase, emptiness, repeat. And here's the scary part, it works. Because we're not craving stuff, we're craving permission. Permission to feel worthy, to feel seen, to feel real. We're taught that if we buy the thing, achieve the image, live the curated life, then we'll be enough. But the finish line keeps moving. Because it was never meant to be reached. It's designed to keep you consuming, not just products, but beliefs, manufactured wants, temporary validation, new inadequacy, repeat. Meanwhile, something more dangerous is happening beneath the surface. A silent shift in how we measure value. We used to value truth, integrity, depth, presence. Now, we value visibility, reach, engagement, algorithmic approval. Success is measured in signals, likes, shares, follow count. And just like money, perception becomes a currency. But like any currency, you can go bankrupt. A post flops, a story gets ignored, you fade from the feed, and suddenly you feel invisible. Not because you are, but because the system stopped validating your existence. This is social credit, rebranded. Not with scores and state control, but with dopamine gamification. You're not asked to believe anything. You're rewarded for performing belief. Say the right things. Align with the right narrative. Signal the right virtues. Don't rock the boat. Don't ask the real questions. Just nod along. Or else, you vanish into silence. So what happens next? You begin to filter yourself. You curate your voice. You trade authenticity for applause. You swap inner clarity for outer approval. You become a content creator of your own identity, performing being human while slowly losing touch with what that ever meant. And the cost? Not just your privacy, not just your time. You lose your compass. You stop knowing what you truly want, what you truly feel, what you actually believe, because it's all been blended with what they told you to want. Your thoughts aren't just influenced, they've been outsourced. And here's the paradox. You have more options than ever, more freedom, more access, more platforms. But you've never been more shaped. Your choices are pre-filtered, your values are behaviorally nudged. Your aspirations are market-tested and pre-approved. You're not deciding, you're reacting, and the more you confuse stimulation for satisfaction, the deeper you sink into the synthetic. So the real question becomes, if your beliefs can be manufactured, if your wants can be installed, then what's left that's truly yours? Strip away the filters, the branding, the recommended for you. What do you actually value? What is real to you? Can you even hear your own voice beneath the noise? Because if you no longer know what's true for you, then what's left to protect? Expanded. When the lights go out, when your eyes close, when no signal pings your location, you enter the last space. They haven't fully mapped your dreams, not your goals, not your ambitions, your actual, untamed, unfiltered dreams. And here's what makes that space different. They don't own it. Not yet. There are no ads, no curated feeds, no AI-generated scroll traps, no push notifications engineered to steal your attention. In your dreams, you don't scroll. You drift. You don't consume. You encounter. And for just a few hours each night, your consciousness goes off-grid. But here's what most don't realize. That place isn't random. It's structured, but not by the system you know. Have you ever noticed the symbols that repeat? The places you've never visited, but feel like home. The voices that speak in no language, yet you understand them. You're not alone. Across continents and cultures, people dream of falling, being chased, discovering hidden rooms, finding keys or doorways, meeting glowing beings, flying over impossible cities, walking into light that speaks without sound. These aren't individual hallucinations. They're collective metaphors, echoes of something deeper, a language beneath all languages. Carl Jung called it the collective unconscious, a shared layer of mind beneath the personal self, a reservoir of archetypes, symbols hardwired into us before memory. Modern science has tried to frame it as evolutionary pattern recognition. But what if it's more than that? What if this shared symbolism isn't just inside you, but beyond you? Think of it like this. Dreams aren't just psychological. They may be dimensional, a subsystem of consciousness that leaks in through the cracks, because it can't be controlled any other way. And here's the glitch in the code. They can't stop you from dreaming. They can monitor your screen time, track your voice, predict your shopping habits, anticipate your mood. But they can't yet decode what your soul chooses to show you when the conscious mind shuts down. Because in your dreams, you're no longer a user. You're something else, a stream of consciousness, too fluid for the algorithm to capture. Some dreams are echoes of the day, some are emotional digestion, but some feel like downloads. You wake up shaken, or enlightened, or both. You ask, where did that come from? Who was that voice? Why did that place feel more real than this one? And sometimes, you bring something back, a vision, a sentence, an emotion, an idea that won't let go. There are stories, hundreds of them, of people across the planet dreaming identical scenes, identical cities, identical symbols, on the same night, speaking languages they've never learned, feeling love from beings they can't describe, meeting ancestors long gone. Is this just imagination, or is it a network, a back channel between souls, too powerful for the system to intercept? What if your dreams aren't escapes, but memories? Memories of the place before this one, the real reality, before it was compressed into this simulation. This is why lucid dreaming is so powerful. Because when you become conscious inside the dream, you're not just witnessing, you're participating, you're bending gravity, breaking logic, meeting your subconscious halfway, or perhaps meeting something beyond it. You're reclaiming agency in a space the system can't pre-render. And that scares it. Because if you learn to become conscious there, you might bring that awareness back here. Many ancient traditions believed that this waking world is the less real one. Mystics called dreams the astral plane. Buddhists called it the bardo, the space between lives. Modern thinkers might call it the raw feed. Reality before it's rendered for mass consumption. Uncompressed truth. Full spectrum perception. Untouched by code. And every night, you go back. You just don't always remember. So, what are your dreams trying to say? What are they reminding you of? What have you forgotten that only the sleeping mind still dares to whisper? Because what you see in dreams might not be fantasy, it might be the unencrypted version of what reality was before they started editing it. Let's step beyond dreams, beyond behavior, beyond belief. Let's enter the one realm where science, spirituality, and simulation theory start to converge: quantum reality. At the subatomic level, the rules of our physical world begin to disintegrate. Particles don't stay put. They blink in and out of existence. They appear in two places at once. They spin clockwise and counterclockwise simultaneously, until you observe them. And when you do, they collapse into one outcome. This is the observer effect, and it changes everything. Let's go to the moment the illusion cracked. A simple experiment. Particles fired at a wall with two slits. No observation. They behave like waves. Rippling, bending, interfering. But observe them. The wave collapses. They behave like particles, solid, focused, singular. Reality adapts, not to matter, but to conscious attention. Think about that. Until you look, the world exists only as potential, a fog of probabilities, undefined. But the moment you observe, the code locks in. Sound familiar? It's how video games save memory. Only render what's in the player's line of sight. Look away, low resolution. Look closer, fully detailed. Reality on demand. If your consciousness works the same way, then maybe the world you experience is being rendered live, just for you. Now, here's where it goes deeper. What if reality doesn't always behave the way it's supposed to? What if the code glitches? Physicists call it quantum tunneling, entanglement, non-locality. But from another lens, these may be quantum backdoors, tiny tears in the simulation. Not big enough to crash the system, but large enough for your awareness to slip through. A prophetic dream, a conversation that happens before you speak it, déjà vu so precise it breaks your breath. A synchronicity so impossible it can't be random. These aren't anomalies, they're clues. Hidden openings, gateways the system didn't mean to leave behind. And what unlocks them? Not passive attention, not habit, but presence. Full, focused, conscious observation. Because when you become aware of the moment, without judgment, without expectation, you disturb the simulation. You create static in the system. Your presence acts like interference, and in that moment, you become unrenderable, unpredictable, undefined, exactly what the simulation can't handle. This is why mystics and meditators have always spoken of stillness, not as a retreat, but as interface access. When you breathe in silence, when you observe without reacting, you're doing something modern science barely understands. You're collapsing the false render and replacing it with something truer. Every time you pause and witness the breath, the thought, the texture of now, you override the code. You write new logic. You inject free will into a deterministic matrix. This isn't a metaphor anymore. Quantum mechanics has shown us that reality at its core is non-local, non-deterministic, and utterly dependent on perception. So maybe consciousness isn't inside the universe. Maybe the universe is inside consciousness. That would make you not a passenger in the simulation, but a co-author of its script. Your awareness becomes a cursor on the raw fabric of reality, pointing, selecting, editing, choosing which version of the moment will be rendered. And that means you are not watching reality, you are interfacing with it. This is why spiritual presence matters, not for peace, not for comfort, but for leverage. The deeper your awareness becomes, the more flexible the world gets. Time slows. Synchronicities spike. Reality softens. You begin to notice that cause and effect aren't fixed, that your thoughts ripple outward, that your mood changes the field, and that realization is a quantum awakening. So ask yourself, what happens when you treat your attention like a brush, a tool, a weapon, a ritual? What doors begin to open when you stop observing the illusion and start co-creating it? Because here's the secret. If your awareness shapes what is rendered, then your consciousness is part of the operating system. You're not a user, not a prisoner, but a subroutine, a self-aware thread of code with the ability to rewrite reality from within. And if your consciousness is living code, then maybe you've always had access. You just forgot where to look. Knowing is not enough. Awareness is just the beginning. If you want to reclaim your reality, you have to intervene, because this system doesn't fall apart when you fight it. It breaks down when you stop running its code. The truth is simple. The simulation needs your participation. If you stop feeding it energy, it starts to collapse. But how do you stop feeding it? You start by interrupting the most sacred part of the system, your own habits. Let's begin with a deceptively powerful technique. 1. Reality journaling. Start documenting the glitches, not dreams, not emotions, but the moments that don't quite add up. Coincidences too perfect. Repeating numbers. Déjà vu. Sudden emotional shifts with no trigger. People saying the same phrase in different places. Delays that feel engineered. These aren't random. They're signs of the simulation adjusting to your awareness. By writing them down, you begin to spot the pattern within the pattern. Over time, your journal becomes a map of the seams, where reality bends. And when you see the seams, you can start pulling the thread. 2. Action disruption, the power of chaos. Next, do something random, on purpose. Take a different route to work. Eat dessert first. Stand instead of sit. Say no when you'd usually say yes. Initiate a conversation with a stranger. Speak a truth you usually withhold. These aren't acts of rebellion, they're code disruptions. Your reality is shaped by predictability. Every deviation you introduce sends a ripple. Why? Because the system counts on you to be reliable. The moment you become unpredictable, you stop being readable. And when you're unreadable, you're uncontrollable. 3. Ritual-based choice. Every day we make hundreds of unconscious choices. Most of them aren't really choices at all. They're scripts, patterns, preloads. To break that loop, introduce ritual into decision-making. Pause before each choice. Touch your chest. Ask one of 3 questions. Is this mine? What would I choose if no one was watching? Am I reacting or responding? Then act deliberately, even if it's uncomfortable. This small pause breaks the automation. It turns instinct into insight. It transforms routine into ritual. 4. Digital detox by circadian rhythm. The system doesn't just live in your phone, it lives in your sleep cycle. Algorithms run best when you're tired, reactive, and overstimulated. So take back your nervous system. Start your digital detox not by turning off everything, but by syncing with your natural biology. No screens 1 hour after waking. Sunlight within 15 minutes of rising. Blue light blocked after sunset. Cold water on the face before bed. Breath work instead of scrolling. You're not just reclaiming rest. You're realigning with a rhythm older than the code. And when your biology returns to baseline, your intuition gets louder than the algorithm. 5 interruption loops. The system relies on momentum. Thought, response, distraction, loop. Over and over. To break it, introduce loop interrupters. Set random alarms with no labels. Place a small object in your pocket, a rock, a key. Every time you touch it, ask, where am I right now? Tie awareness to movement. Every time you walk through a doorway, pause and breathe. Leave yourself notes in your own voice. Are you choosing this? These simple acts do one thing. They remind you that you're inside a system and give you a moment to choose again. This isn't about escape. It's about becoming unprogrammable. It's a daily reminder. You are not your habits, not your feed, not your script. You are the witness behind the input, the writer behind the loop, the observer that bends the world just by watching it. So no, you don't need to break the system. You just need to stop running its code. You're not alone. You've never been, even if it feels like it, because the ones who have truly woken up, they're not loud, they're not viral, they're not posting manifestos or preaching revolution. They're just living differently, silently, deliberately, invisibly rewriting the script from the inside out. Let me tell you a story. There's a man named Keon, lives in a city just like yours, wakes up before sunrise, not because he has to, but because he chooses to. He walks barefoot on the earth, eats only when hungry, carries a small stone in his pocket to remind himself, this moment is mine. He works at a regular job, answers emails, pays bills. But in between all that, he's watching, listening, redirecting. Instead of reacting, he observes. Instead of rushing, he slows down. Instead of craving more, he cultivates less. No one would look at him and say, there's a rebel. But if you look closer, you'll notice something's off. He doesn't rush in crowds. He doesn't fill silences with noise. He doesn't flinch at manipulation. He walks through the simulation, like he's already seen the source code. And there are others, the woman who deletes her social apps not to make a statement, but because she knows they drain her soul, the teenager who questions the curriculum and teaches themselves from banned books, the cashier who places one hand on their heart before speaking to each customer, just to stay grounded. They don't look like revolutionaries, but they're doing something the system can't tolerate. They're choosing for themselves, over and over again, quietly, relentlessly. This is what the architects fear most. Not protests, not rebellion, not anger. They fear clarity. They fear people who no longer run on momentum, who pause, who notice, who opt out, because that kind of stillness, that calm, steady awareness, breaks the loop. And when enough people start living that way, something shifts, not just in them, but in the collective field. It's like tuning forks. When one fork begins to vibrate at a new frequency, others nearby begin to shift. Without force, without touch. That's what you are when you wake up. A tuning fork in human form, resonating in a new way, and the field around you adjusts. People may not know why they feel calmer around you, why they start questioning things, why they suddenly feel safe to speak a truth they've buried. They're not reacting to your words. They're responding to your field. This is the power of silent awakening. It's not glamorous, it's not public, it's subtle, it's sacred, it's contagious, and it's spreading. There are people right now rewriting their inner scripts. From the ground up, they're not waiting for the world to change. They're becoming the kind of person a new world could be built around. And they're doing it with no applause, no recognition, just a quiet fire burning behind their eyes. You might not see them, but you'll feel them at a coffee shop, in a quiet room, passing by you on a crowded street. A glance, a presence, a stillness that says, yes, I see it too. No, you're not crazy. Yes, it's all real. And no, you're not alone. But here's the truth. Even with them out there, your path starts alone, because waking up isn't done in groups. It happens in the space, between thoughts, in the moment. You decide to stop playing along. No one can walk that threshold for you. But once you do, you'll find them waiting. Not with answers, not with solutions, but with the same presence, the same field, the same quiet courage. That helped you cross the line. You're not alone, but you must begin alone. You're not here to destroy the system. You're not here to tear it all down. That was never the point. The point is to see it clearly, and then recode your relationship with it. From the inside out. Think of it like this. You don't need to escape the simulation, because you're not inside it. In the way you've been taught, you are the interface, not a user, not a character, not even an observer. You are the bridge, the living point of contact, between mind and matter, between code and consciousness, between worlds. And the interface can be upgraded. Most people live life as if their thoughts are reporting reality. This is how it is. This is who I am. This is what's possible. But those aren't reports. They're commands. They're instructions to the system. Your beliefs aren't passive. They're interactive code. Your focus isn't neutral. It's directive energy. Your mind isn't just experiencing this world. It's helping render it in real time. Once you understand that, everything changes. Because then, you don't fight the rules. You redirect the flow. You don't resist the interface. You reprogram it. And no, this doesn't mean you get to control the weather or bend time on demand. This isn't a superpower. It's something more radical. Conscious participation. You stop being a consumer of experiences and start becoming a composer of them. You stop asking, what does this moment mean? And start declaring, This is what I choose to make of it. And reality listens, because it always has. This is the real alchemy, not turning metal into gold, but turning automatic reactivity into intentional creation, turning emotion into signal, turning thought into frequency, turning presence into access. And the instrument of that alchemy, your mind. When your mind becomes intentional, your life becomes impossible to predict. Why? Because you're no longer being run by previous inputs. You're no longer regurgitating loops. You're no longer coded by old traumas and trends. You're live, unscripted, awake. This is what the mystics meant when they said, "Be in the world, but not of it." It doesn't mean disconnect. It means interface differently, with awareness, with fluidity, with presence. You learn to walk between layers. You can feel the pressure of the system, but you don't submit to it. You see the content, but you don't collapse into it. You engage with the illusion, but you know it's a stage. And because you know, you're free, not to escape, but to interact on your own terms. So let go of the idea that you need to blow it all up. You don't. You only need to stop giving your power to scripts you didn't write and outcomes you never chose. Start small. Choose how you enter each room. Choose the lens through which you interpret delay. Choose what you amplify and what you let dissolve. Each choice is code. Each pause is power. Each act of awareness is a new interface between you and the field. Because you're not stuck in the system, you're streaming it through your own frequency. And once you know that, truly know that, you'll never move through life the same way again. You've seen behind the curtain now, and no, you don't need to escape. You were never trapped. What you needed was to wake up, to remember that your mind is not a cage, but a console, that your life is not a loop, unless you keep replaying it. You don't need to fight the system. You don't need to burn it down. You just need to stop feeding it your unconscious energy and start making different choices. Not louder, not more dramatic, just clearer. So, if something shifted in you during this video, if you felt that quiet voice inside whispering, "Yes, this is what I've been sensing all along," then stay with it. Keep watching, keep asking, keep noticing, not because I told you to, but because you know. You're ready to remember who you actually are. If this message spoke to you, subscribe to keep walking this path together. Share it with someone else who feels the static. Someone who knows something's off, but doesn't have the words for it yet. And in the comments below, tell me what part cracked the illusion for you. I read everyone, not to build an audience, but to build a network of awake minds, holding the grid open for others to see. This isn't about rebellion. It's about reconfiguration, because the system hasn't ended. It's just your turn to play it differently.